During this period of my life, about 2 years ago, I would spend a lot of my time working, and I didn't really have a lot of opportunities for meeting new people. For this reason, I thought it was a great idea to download Tinder, save myself the hassle of trying to meet new people organically, and just skip right to the dating aspect of meeting women. Fast forward about 2 weeks after being on the app, and mindlessly swiping on people with nothing ever following the matches, I matched with this beautiful girl, who we'll call Alaya. During the time of us first matching, I didn't really expect anything to happen from it, much like all the matches before Alaya. And to be honest, it felt a little bit too good to be true. She was so out of my league, it just seemed so perfect. She was into all the same things I was: cars, burgers, horror movies. It was like a match made in heaven. But this should have been my first clue that something just wasn't right. Although her account did have the blue checkmark, events would soon follow that led me to delete Tinder for good and swear off all online dating apps for the rest of my life. We started off chatting pretty normally, like any Tinder conversation goes. The first few messages were a bit awkward, and I was a bit nervous because of how perfect Alaya seemed. We would start by sending simple messages back and forth. How are you? What did you do today? Any good shows or movies on Netflix, etc. And that's how it would continue for a few days, until Alaya finally sent the "we should meet up" message. I was filled with excitement after reading this, and quickly responded with, "Sounds good. What time should I pick you up?" trying to hide my excitement over the message. Alaya lived about 20 minutes from me in a neighboring town, and we both agreed I would swing by her place and we would drive around for a bit and just chat, maybe grab some fast food on the way. When the day finally came, at around 7:40 p.m., I began to head over to her place, texting her and be there soon. She replied with, "Okay, see you then," with a smiley face. After some time, I reached Alaya's place. I found some parking on the busy street and had to walk about 5 minutes from my car to her house. I texted her that I was there, and she replied with one text, which would be the last text that I ever received from Alaya. The text read, "Come inside." Upon reading this text, I was filled with an eerie feeling. Of course, I know going into a stranger's house is a bad idea. I was desperate though, so don't judge me. I figured I would take the risk because there was no red flags leading up to this point. She was even verified. I got to the bottom of the steps leading up to her front door, and I just couldn't do it. My body physically wouldn't let me walk up the steps to go inside. It just felt off. I texted her that we originally agreed to drive around, and that we probably should stick to the plan. I got no text back from her, and after about 15 minutes of waiting outside her house, I decided to cut my losses and started walking back to my car. I had to drive by her house in order to get to my parking spot. So, on the way out, I took a slow drive by the front of her house, and this is where I saw something that made me feel ice cold all over my body. I saw a man standing on the front porch of Alaya's house, with no movements at all. He was tall, overweight, had an unkempt beard and long greasy hair. He attempted to make eye contact with me the entire time I drove by, and he didn't move an inch aside from turning his head to follow my car. I never heard from Alaya again, and when I went to go look at her account after arriving back home, the account was deleted. I don't know what would have happened to me had I gone inside, and I never reported it to the police. I know it was dumb to not report it, but to this day, I just feel embarrassed at the thought of it, and it's been easier to just forget the incident and move on with my life. To whoever's reading this, just remember to trust your gut. 99% of the time, it's probably right. I'm new to this subreddit, and I would like to share the story of when my arm got broken in an attack started by Tinder. I am a 20-year-old woman, and 4 years ago, at the age of 16, I was using Tinder. I faked my age, saying that I was 18 years plus to not get declined. I was a bored teenager with little to no friends, and I wanted to be weird and talk to people. I swiped right on a few random people and had normal conversations. The third person I swiped right on, an hour after the fact, messaged me a normal hello. Since I didn't want to call out names, we'll call him Austin. He and I had a nice bond. We were both supposedly bored teenagers, and we had a lot in common. We told jokes to each other, and just had a great time. About a month later, he started actually flirting with me. And I mean hardcore flirting. He was saying things like, "I can't wait to see your body." It kind of weirded me out, but I laughed it off and played along. He then asked for my phone number, and here's where things began to get out of line. He texted me a ton of inappropriate things that would get you banned on Tinder. I asked him, "What the hell is this stuff?" And he just said, "Oh, I'm just joking." I know it may suck to hear, but for the next few weeks, everything was fine. It was as if he was acting normal to get it out of my brain, and I was going along with it. Then he asked if we could meet up. Being the ignorant teen that I was, I accepted, and we met up. He asked me to meet up with him at a dead park at midnight, and said that we should do this so nobody knows we snuck out of the house. I was stupid, so I agreed. When I got there, I saw a white van. It gave me weird vibes, and since I didn't see Austin anywhere, I was contemplating just leaving. Just when I started taking steps back and going back home, a 27-year-old looking man started chasing me. I tried to run away from him, but he hit me over the back of the head with something very hard, some sort of metal object. Whatever it was hit me right below my messy bun. I started bleeding and fell back over. This guy grabbed me, but I was still trying to fight. I kicked him, which was a mistake, because he dropped me and started stomping on my arm. I had cuts and scars all over the top of my arm, and at this point, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. It seemed to have scared the guy off because he ran back to his van. And then we heard the police siren starting to approach the park. It turned out one of the neighbors called the police station down the block because she heard my screaming. I was then rushed to the hospital. It was a week before I was recovered enough to go home. I used my non-broken arm to delete Tinder, and I never plan on using this app again. Still to this day, I wonder about what would have happened to me that night if that neighbor hadn't called the police. I'm very glad that she did. Just for some background info, I'm an 18-year-old male currently living in New York. I'm 6'4" and pretty big. I've always been the center of ridicule and teasing from a young age due to my size. Just for some context, I stopped growing in 9th grade about 4 years ago. I was already done with puberty and had a full-on beard like I was an adult. I took advantage of this sometimes, which led me to fooling around in 9th grade with a girl who was in college. This story takes place when I was in 10th grade. I was lonely after a breakup with my girlfriend who was going on 7 months. I was looking for a one-night stand, so I turned on Tinder. I set up a fake profile with my real picture and waited. There was this gorgeous girl whom I matched with. This girl was too good to be true, which gave me the first red flag, but I went along with it anyways. We exchanged innocent messages and planned to meet at her place the next day at around 9 p.m. I wasn't as excited as you might think, because I did have some doubts about this girl, as I didn't know if she was real. So 9 p.m. the next day rolls around, and I get ready to go to her place. I mentally prepared myself if anything crazy was going down. Before I left, I texted my dad saying I was going to a friend's house and left. I asked my good friend Isaac, who was a senior, to drive me since he had a car. In the car, he warned me to be cautious. Long story short, he drives me to her apartment, and I ring the doorbell. I hear light footsteps behind the door, and high-pitched voice saying, "Be right there." That's when I texted my friend, telling him everything is fine and that he should leave. Boy, was I wrong. The door opens to the girl in the picture. I immediately felt excited, which didn't last for long. On my Tinder account, I wrote that I was 24, when really I was only 15. She, not knowing this, swiftly asked if I wanted a drink. I said I didn't want anything, which visibly made her facial expression turn from happy to pissed off. I realized that maybe I was about to be drugged, and I wasn't about to take any chance, so I asked to go to the bathroom. She then, out of the blue, said sure, happily. Again, her weird response confirmed my theory in my head. I go to the bathroom and quickly text my friend to come back and pick me up. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure dressed in all black, standing in the shower, trying to hide behind the curtain. I figure he saw me looking at him, because not even 2 seconds later, he lunged at me. I was scared shitless, even though I was massively taller than this man. He tried pushing me to the floor, yet to no avail. I overpowered him too vastly. I grabbed him by the shirt and looked him in the eye. He was around 5'10" and pretty buff, mid-30s, bald, and looked to be of Russian descent. I pushed him on the floor and cursed him out. He screamed some vulgar words at me, which is when I punched him in the face. There I was, a 15-year-old in a bathroom with a knocked-out man. I panicked, but I kept my cool and took out my phone, and took many photos of the man's face. By then, my friend texted me and told me he was outside of the building, waiting for me. By then, the girl opened the door to the bathroom and started to scream. I pushed her out of the way with all my power and sprinted the hell out of the apartment. When I got to my friend's car, I frantically explained to him what happened. I only then realized I could have been drugged, killed, or worse. I obviously took screenshots of her profile and messages between us. Even though I had all the proof in the world to lock these two assholes up, I didn't, because I was too scared of my parents finding out. Moral of the story: be very cautious when dating online.